Okay, so I'd like to say hello to everyone. We're going to wait about 2 more minutes, or 3 more minutes, just to see if anyone else joins us. And then we'll get started. So, who is here with us?
Hi.
Okay, can you see the shared screen? Somebody say yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay, terrific. So we'll wait 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Ortman, and I joined Smart City Kids this past spring as a college consultant. I've worked for more than 20 years in college counseling, primarily at independent schools, both in the United States and in China, Korea, and Ecuador. So I'm very familiar with application processes and different schools, both within the United States and in Europe, Canada, and a few in Asia and Australia as well. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to talk about thinking outside of the Ivy box, which means thinking about other ways to look at college options and thinking about schools that you might not have considered in the past. So the first thing that you need to think about is, what are your priorities? For some people, it's prestige, and that comes before everything else. And I get it. That's a big thing for many families. For others, it's a focus on location, academics, specific programs, size. Some families need scholarships. Merit scholarships can be one of the concerns families have. So there are many, many different ideas and thoughts that come into picking a college. When we talk about the Ivy League, many people include schools that aren't officially members. So these are the 8 schools, and they began as individual schools with no relationship to one another, joined as the Ivy League in around 1954, but that was the name of their athletic league. So it was not meant to be any sort of a consortium of schools with academic ties, but rather just a football league, basketball, etc. So these are those schools. Everyone seems to know these schools, although not everybody can rattle them off. But those are probably the best known
Can you take that?
private schools in the
Too late.
So let's turn off microphones,
Listen.
everybody, if you can do that for me. Okay. So I put in this slide because I'm always baffled by students who say, I just want to go to an Ivy League school, because they're very different. And that's something to be very aware of when you're looking at schools. So size varies from Dartmouth, which is the smallest with only about 4,500 students, to Cornell, which is the largest with 15,000 students or so, and more options in terms of schools within the college. It's also a land grant school, which makes Cornell different from the others. The environment is going to be different as well. These schools range from urban to suburban and small college towns. For a student who wants to live in a city, certainly Dartmouth or Cornell is not the best choice. So that's another thing to consider. The curricula also vary dramatically. So you have at one extreme Cornell with its core requirements, which are quite comprehensive. On the other end, Brown with its totally open curriculum. So that's another thing to consider. For a student who needs structure, Brown is not the right school. And just saying an Ivy League school, again, does not encompass what the student needs for a good fit. And then sports and activities also vary greatly, as do the offerings in athletics and activities from school to school. So that's another reason why to just say the Ivy League really makes no sense at all. When we talk about international rankings, you can take a look here at where the Ivy League schools fall. Poor Brown didn't make it into the top 20 at all. Um, you can see that Harvard is number 3, Princeton is number 9, Yale is 8, Columbia is all the way to 17, and Cornell at 19. And some of the other schools, UC Berkeley, for example, or Johns Hopkins, UCLA, they have more international fame or ranking than some of the Ivy League schools. So that's something else to consider if you're looking at how your school will be considered globally. When you start looking beyond the rankings at most innovative schools, Arizona State University is ranked number 1 on various different rankings as the most innovative school, followed by MIT, Georgia State, Georgia Tech, Purdue, Stanford. I'm not seeing any Ivy League schools on this list. So that's something else to consider. And I think when you're thinking about jobs, to think in terms of what future employers will be looking for. And innovation is going to be big. Okay, here's another example where only Princeton shows up as the alma mater of top CEOs. So what you're going to see here is location of the school was more important for the CEOs in general. We turn off the mics, please, everyone. Everybody, mic, okay? So only Jeff Bezos went to an Ivy League school. And if you look at these, Arkansas, Nebraska, Minnesota, Central Oklahoma, these are not the schools that you would expect to see. Here are the schools with the highest starting salaries. And again, these are schools that have strong engineering programs. And it's the starting salary based on the major rather than the name of the institution. So a school like Stevens or Worcester Polytechnic or Rensselaer, these are schools that are much more accessible to students with admissions rates that are quite a bit higher than the Ivy League schools. And you're getting an outstanding education with an engineering degree that is highly valued by employers. Okay, best schools for entrepreneurs. What are we looking at? Babson shows up over and over as the #1 school in the United States for entrepreneurs. And then it's followed by the schools on this list. Again, hard to find Ivy League schools here, right? So they range from UC Berkeley to Baylor, UT Austin, University of Michigan, but it's a sound list of schools that are also not Ivy League schools. We have liberal arts colleges with engineering majors as well. So I find this really interesting because while a lot of the liberal arts colleges have 3-2 programs where students do 3 years at the liberal arts schools and then transfer for the final 2 years to larger universities with engineering programs. These schools actually have majors in engineering. So you can get all of the advantages of a small liberal arts college and still come away with a full engineering degree, which is something that's amazing to be able to achieve as well. Okay, among the 25 best colleges based on graduates' career outcomes, again, this list of schools is surprising, not necessarily the schools you would have thought of for the best graduate outcomes. And I think that there are certain schools that we'll revisit on this list that are certainly worth taking note of and considering when you're applying to school. And this is one that I think is extremely important. Most accessible professors. So again, these are almost all, they are all small liberal arts schools where the access to professors is open, where students are able to meet frequently with their teachers, to find mentors among their professors. And it's been proven that finding a mentor is generally more important for future careers or going on in academics than the name of the school a student attended. Okay, we already did that one. Okay, so there is a whole country out there. I know that the majority of students who I have counseled since I've been in New York over the past 12 years have tended to look at the Northeast and the West Coast for a select number of schools, with one or two schools thrown in here and there. But in general, the majority of the states in the United States are the states that they fly over. And I can't tell you how many times I had students tell me, I hate Ohio, I hate Missouri, I hate the Midwest. And when I've said, have you ever visited any of those states? They've said no. So there's a great misconception about what there is in the center of the country. And there are many, many outstanding schools outside of the Northeast. Okay. In the Northeast are the Little Ivies. Okay, these are the schools that are also well known. I didn't have admissions rates for all of them, but they are well known in the Northeast, and they are considered to be Little Ivies, which seems to grant them some extra prestige. If you look at the rates of admission, you can see that the majority of them are low. They're competitive, they're good schools, but they're not better than many, many other of the schools that we're going to look at. And I'd like to add here that what does better mean? Most of the time when people use the term a better school, what they're talking about is a more competitive school. They're looking at these 8%, 4%, 6%, and using that to equate with better, which is certainly not the case. It doesn't mean a better faculty. It doesn't mean better facilities. All it means is that the school is more selective. Or as one webinar that I listened to called the schools more rejective, which I found pretty interesting because that's also a fact about many of the most selective schools. Okay, these are the schools that are commonly referred to as the public Ivies. So they are the big name public universities. So you have the two UC schools, Berkeley and Los Angeles, Michigan, Ann Arbor, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Texas at Austin, and University of Virginia at Charlottesville. They're also extremely difficult to get into. And really, in most cases, any of the University of California schools are outstanding schools. In Michigan, Michigan State is a wonderful university and much more accessible than University of Michigan at Ann Arbor. The same is true with all of these states. And then there are other amazing public universities throughout the country, University of Washington, University of Arizona, lots and lots of other public universities that are strong choices. Okay, so here are some more schools that are top schools in the Northeast, right? Barnard is often overlooked. The students will look at Columbia and forget that a Barnard College education is an outstanding education and that they're able to take courses at Columbia. If you look at Colgate with 8%, it's as competitive as many of the Ivy League schools, not many, as some. Georgetown with 12%, Hopkins 6%, NYU has become crazy competitive and was 13% this past year. MIT is as competitive now as Stanford, and Tufts and Wellesley are also incredibly competitive schools that certainly should bear the same prestige as any of the Ivy League schools among people who know anything at all about academics. I love Franklin and Marshall College. That's a school that might be overlooked. It was founded in 1795. It's the first college chartered by the Board of Regents in the state of New York. No, that's Union College. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Stevens Institute of Technology, chartered 1870, right? I don't know how many of you have visited Stevens. I have to admit that I only visited 3 years ago. I thought Hoboken, who wants to be in Hoboken, and was amazed by the beautiful campus overlooking Manhattan across the water that you can see there. It has an acceptance rate of 40%, but at the same time, it's ranked among the top colleges, ranked 12th for pay scale. It's ranked top 15 for internships. It not only is a school of engineering and science, but also has a school of business, school of systems and enterprises, and a college of arts and letters. So that's a choice that many students overlook. Bard is another one that's overlooked. It's one of those schools that has a high admissions rate, but is extremely competitive once students are attending. It's got a Center for Civic Engagement, which is involved in education in prisons. It has high schools throughout the country or the Northeast that provide education to public school children. It has very strong international connections. And I read this week that Bard is opening its doors to a large number of Afghani students who have had to flee from the colleges they were studying at in Afghanistan. That has first-year seminar and the distribution requirements that give the students both breadth and depth. And the fields of concentrations are extremely interesting and can be combined in joint majors. And then a note is that there's a Bard Rockefeller semester in science where students can enroll in an intensive semester of research at New York's Rockefeller University, which is a school that is very famous for its research and not accessible to most undergraduates. Okay, Dickinson is a school that's often overlooked. It's in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. You can see it has an admissions rate of 40%, but it has wonderful programs where students can take accelerated tracks towards earning a law degree, completing 3 years at Dickinson and 3 years at Dickinson School of Law. Oops, sorry. Whoops, I have to go back. It has really interesting other joint master's degree programs, including an accelerated Bachelor of Science degree from Johns Hopkins School of Nursing, 13.5-month program following 3 years at Dickinson, and a guaranteed scholarship of at least $10,000 to any Dickinson student admitted to William E. Simon Graduate School of Business Administration at the University of Rochester. So again, it's a way to accelerate studies, save money, and combine a small liberal arts education with a law degree or a business degree at a larger school. Okay, Union is the one that was the first college chartered by the Board of Regents in the state of New York, 1795. I think very few people realize that Union has this sort of a background. It's a small school, only 22,050 undergraduates. Its admissions rate is 43%, but it has an engineering school that is outstanding. And it has BS degrees in biomedical engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering. All of them are accredited by the Board for Engineering and Technology. And all of the seniors will complete a year-long design project, which they are able to showcase when they're looking for jobs. Interestingly enough, it just received a grant of $51 million. So the goal of the school is to transform both their engineering and liberal arts programs with the creation of this Institute for Engineering and Computer Science that is being built. Okay. The South is another area of the United States that many students are reluctant to consider, but there are wonderful, wonderful schools in the South. So there's Davidson, Duke, Emory, Rice, Gainesville, Florida, UT Austin, Vanderbilt, and Wash University, St. Louis. All of these are schools, again, with prestige and selectivity that can rival the Ivy League schools. But there are other amazing schools that are, again, more accessible. So Wake Forest University, which was founded in 1834, is a wonderful size with 5,200 undergraduates. It has the lowest percentage of large classes of any top 30 universities. So students have more access to their professors and more opportunity to interact and form mentoring relationships. It's a primary leader in development of the Piedmont Triad Research Park, which is something new, which is a biotechnology initiative in Winston-Salem. And it has an academic internship and immersion into the life and work and culture of the nation's capital through this AKE Washington, D.C. program. There are semester and summer internships where students have great opportunities to learn about themselves in Washington, D.C. And then this I found very surprising, that it is a school that works with the Department of Defense and several industry leaders through its nanotechnology and molecular materials center, working with practical applications in manufacturing and national defense. So that was a surprising fact to me and should be an interesting one to students interested in those fields. College of William and Mary really should be with the public universities because it is a public university, but I kept it apart because it's so unique. This was founded in 1693 and is the second oldest institution of higher education in the United States and the ninth oldest institution in the English-speaking world, which was very surprising to me. It's small with only 6,200 students, has an admissions rate of 37.7%, which means that strong students have a strong chance of being accepted. It has a joint project with the National Institute of American History and Democracy and the William and Mary Colonial Williamsburg Foundation, which allows students to study early America and with the purpose of operating in museums, which is a pretty unique opportunity for students. It boasts an amazing freshman retention rate with 95%, which is of course an indicator of student satisfaction. And another highlight of this school is its joint degree program with St. Andrews in Scotland, which many students are able to take advantage of. I hope I'm not just racing through these schools, but I want to give you some insight into as many schools as I can, so that hopefully it will spark your interest in continuing to look into not just these schools, but other schools that are a little bit more off the beaten track, or as we said, out of the box. Elon is an up and coming school, which has a great size as well of 6,291 students. It has a crazy high.
Sorry, I'm on a Zoom.
We have microphones on. Thank you. But what I am amazed at this school is ranked #2 in undergraduate teaching. Again, if teaching and learning are the primary focuses of what a student is looking for, ignore the admissions rate. 78% does not mean that your peer group is not going to be a stimulating one. It means that the school is working to provide accessibility to as many students as possible. It's a school that I visited a few years ago. I was very impressed by not only the counseling, which helps students map out their 4 years during the first semester of school so that they were able to take double majors, triple majors, and fit in travel. At least 80% of students take at least one international study experience. And they combine these with internships, research, service. They have short trips, long trips. 88% of students participate in service learning. 87% complete internships. 58% hold leadership positions, and 22% work with faculty members on undergraduate research. This is a wonderful place, and it's in that triangle that has the North Carolina triangle that has Duke and Chapel Hill, so that there is a great deal of research going on in that area, and a lot of companies looking for students who have just graduated to join their teams. University of Richmond is another one I love, in Richmond, Virginia. It has a school called the Jepson School of Leadership, which is the country's first ever undergraduate school of leadership studies, which I find very important. They provide synergy between liberal arts, business, leadership, and law. They have graduate school teachers teaching in the undergraduate program, so that a student studying, let's say, constitutional law at the undergraduate level might have a professor from Richmond's law school. They have students beginning research immediately in their first year if they wish to, and offer special funding for undergraduate research projects, which is provides amazing opportunities for students as well. And then we come to the West Coast. No, I mean, excuse me, the Midwest. This is the primary flyover territory in the United States. But again, we have some terrific schools. So I don't know how many students think of Carleton or Grinnell or McAllister when they're looking at colleges. Northwestern, yes, people know Northwestern. They know the University of Chicago and WashU St. Louis. Notre Dame seems to have become less popular among the students I work with than it was before. But you can see there's a robust number of interesting schools in the Midwest as well. I put Case Western Reserve as the first in my list outside of that initial group, because it's a wonderful school that's really known for world-class research and takes 27.5% of students. It has a focus on makerspace. It has a new building that's an innovation center with a big focus on venture creation, 440 dual degree programs, and the students have broad access to the 4 colleges and schools, which are engineering, arts and sciences, nursing, and management. So lots of opportunities there. Cleveland, Ohio is a real city. It's not sending you to the cornfields of the Midwest. It's a school that students should consider. And it's a school that has early action, which I also like, because it gives students the opportunity to apply early without committing early decision. Okay, Kenyon in Gambier, Ohio is a wonderful school. It has specific programs in Honduras and other countries. It's known for its writing program. It has a focus on writing regardless of what a student chooses to study, and it's known as the Writer College. It really has a fine reputation and is worth considering. Another one, College of Worcester. Worcester, oops, should be Ohio, not OJ, Ohio. This one has an emphasis on mentored student research. So over 90% of graduates are employed or in grad school 6 months after completing their degree. They have great financial aid. Over 75% of the students receive aid, and the average Worcester student receives 58% off the sticker price of the education. Denison, another great one. Students can get on-the-job experience with the help of this robust internship program that they have. They also have leadership initiatives at Denison, including a 6-day retreat called Leadership, and their acceptance rate into law and medical school are consistently better than the national average, which is something also that's worth noting. I'm going to hurry along. So in the West, we have fewer schools that are terribly competitive. Caltech is at the top of the list for engineering schools, competing with MIT on most surveys for the top engineering school. Stanford this year had a 4% admission rate. And then many people overlook the Claremont Colleges. So this is a wonderful consortium of Claremont, Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd, Pitzer, Pomona, and Scripps. All of these schools, are on the same campus, basically. So it's individual colleges within one major campus, a lot like how a university would have individual colleges of medicine, engineering, or whatever. They're outstanding, outstanding schools. And Harvey Mudd also, although the name does not resonate as easily as Caltech with people, it's a very, very fine math and engineering school, and students are able to cross-register at all of the Claremont colleges. Santa Clara is one that I recommend highly. They have early action as well. It also has one of the best retention rates in the country, the same 95%. If any of you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat box, and we'll go back and take a look at them. This school is located right in the middle of the Silicon Valley, just down the street from some of the most innovative and successful business in the world. And they pride themselves on having their students recruited heavily by Google, Apple, NVIDIA, and Cisco. So students have that ability to look for internships in those companies, to look for guidance from mentors, to develop their own companies, and look for mentors within not just the school, but also these companies. It's famous for its high-tech innovation, and it has an acceptance rate of 49%, which again makes it highly accessible to students and does not in any way make it less outstanding academically. One of the quirkier schools in the West is Reed in Portland, Oregon. It's an extremely liberal school that's known for extreme academic rigor. It's the only college, I found this fascinating, in the country with a research nuclear reactor that's staffed primarily by undergraduates. You might not want to live near their nuclear reactor, but so far all has been good. It has small interactive conference style classes that demand active participation by students. And it's ranked #1 in the nation in the percent of STEM majors who go on to earn PhDs in STEM fields. Second among US liberal arts colleges, the percentage of graduates going on to earn doctoral degrees, and fourth among all institutions of higher education for earning doctoral degrees, which is pretty impressive for a school with only 1,400 undergraduates. Colorado College is another great one. They have 2,000 students. They work on a block plan of 3.5 weeks, which is quite unique. So students take only one class at a time. The classes are small and they have no designated end time. They run as long as the teacher needs. And then every month, the students get a 4.5-day block break to recharge before they start a new course. So students in total take 8 classes a year, but during each of the blocks, they're able to focus completely on the single subject, and it offers the opportunities. For example, in a geology class, the professor is able to take the students off campus without having to worry about getting back in time for the next period. They also have great financial aid and study abroad options, and it's a gorgeous location. I had to include the snow slide. Okay, so that sums up the introduction I had to schools. What I want to say is that when I started putting together my schools, my list was so long that I could have spoken to you for hours. The opportunities outside of the Ivy League and the best known and most competitive institutions feels infinite, really infinite. When you start looking into what each college has to offer, the special programs, the honors colleges within universities, the internship possibilities, and who the professors are and what they've done, it's pretty amazing. So what I recommend to you is that as you start looking at schools, you dig deeply. I always tell my students to look into specific majors, not just at the name of the major and if it's offered, but into what the actual required courses are, who the professors are, and what the professors are researching at this time. Sometimes you'll find that a school that was lower down on your list or not on your list yet at all has a professor who is researching exactly what you want to study and who you would really like to work with. And this can impact not just your college experience, but where you go to graduate school, if you choose to go, the career you choose, where you choose to live, and a lot of other factors that will be important during the rest of your life. When I work with students, my goal is always to look for fit. So one thing is a student's aspirations or a family's aspirations, which we never ignore. The other is to look for a solid list of schools that are fit schools that meet the academic, social, environmental, other needs a student has. And for some students, this can be Greek life that they really want or really don't want, what kind of athletics the school has, not only to participate in, but to be able to attend at sporting events. There are lots of different things that we look at. So I always want to be sure that we're addressing all of those things. Um, I'm going to stop sharing now and let's see if we have any questions. Okay. Okay, what makes an institute of technology is one of the questions I have here. And most of those schools began with technology as the focus. They were primarily engineering schools that over the years have expanded to include other majors. The focus of study will often be engineering, so that might be the primary school within the university. And the schools will have accreditation in the areas that fall within the technology area. But you're going to find, if you're interested in computer studies, is some schools have computer studies under engineering and others don't. So it's important when you're looking at schools to see where the different programs fall and what the colleges offer. Someone here is confirming what I said about Santa Clara. Is someone who is an alum and says it's true that internships and entry-level jobs in Silicon Valley are accessible to these students and that these companies do heavily recruit there. So a question here about the best way to get started in narrowing students' choices. I usually like students to just sit down and think about big, small, geography, and a few of those kind of things, and then to try to visit locally a big school and a small school. So within the greater New York area or going into Pennsylvania or Connecticut, you can find different sorts of schools. So NYU is definitely a school that is not a campus school, right? It's a school that is spread out through the city. It gives you a feel of what a large urban campus looks like. If you go and check out a smaller school, let's say you go to Franklin and Marshall in Pennsylvania, which is a decent drive, or Connecticut College, or one of the ones that are close, you can get a feel for the smaller schools. And then I like students to build a really, really big list initially. And so most high schools will offer either Naviance or SCORE, or a program where students will be asked to put down the colleges they're thinking about. And I think the more school students put, the better, because they'll start adding and taking them away as they attend the visits that colleges make to their schools or virtual visits. And that's another way to work on a list, is to attend as many visits as students can when colleges come to their high schools. That also shows demonstrated interest. So I think students also often think they want a large school, but really what they want is a school that's bigger than their high school, that they're not ready to take on 25,000 students. So that's something else to talk about with your children, or to think about students who are online right now, to think about, do you want to disappear in the back of a huge lecture hall? Or do you want a more intimate setting? Do you want to have relationships with your professors from the beginning? Or are you happy to wait until you're well into your major to start really interacting with your professors, and to look at the student teacher ratios? So there's a really good question here about schools like Santa Clara with the religious affiliations. The majority of them are not really religious schools. Most, Santa Clara, not at all a religious feeling to it in the way that some of the more religious schools do. There is a Catholic presence. Catholic schools have generally will have crucifixes in the classrooms. They may require a few courses in religious studies. They're not trying to, what's the word I want? Convert students. Their goal is not to convert students to Catholicism. It's something that most students don't pay that much attention to unless they want to. I've never heard a complaint from a student of Georgetown about it being a Catholic school, but you will find some schools. I found when I visited Providence College, the religious feeling was stronger than what I felt at Boston College. But again, I would never tell a student, don't apply to one of those schools because it has a religious affiliation, in the same way that Brandeis is associated with Judaism, but certainly is not trying to convert students to Judaism and has a robust community of students who are not Jewish and who are international students as well. Okay, here's how do I navigate the parents' criteria schools with the students, and what do I find most challenging? I think the most challenging thing I run into is trying to to not be negative at the same time that I'm realistic. So often students, parents will have a goal for their children that is not realistic, where the outcome is highly unlikely, where I can already look at a transcript and be quite sure that the student's chances are not high for being admitted. What I often do is tell families there's no harm in applying early decision one to a college that a student might spend the rest of his or her life dreaming about and wondering if he or she had a chance to get in, with the understanding that the schools are what I like to call lottery schools. So when you get down to the schools that are 4 or 6% admissions rates, a great deal of the decision making is based around shaping the college's class. That has to do with the demographic profile of the student who's applying and things that are entirely outside of the student's control. So a perfect student who has done absolutely everything right might be denied entry or deferred entry to the college of choice just because this year that college is looking for students outside of New York City, or more students from rural America, or more international students, or whatever the school needs to round out its class. And that's something that is a reality and a reason why I always look to have schools that have higher acceptance rates. And it's always a discussion um, among the student, the parents, and the counselor to look at what the alternatives are and how to structure the applications by early action, early decision one, early decision two, and regular decision. I have a comment here about Quest University in British Columbia. I actually visited that school a few years ago. It's in one of the most gorgeous locations I've ever seen. It does have a block system as that's similar to Colorado colleges, and extremely quirky students. Students from all different kinds of backgrounds, from kids who have GEDs because they just found high school to be ridiculous, to kids who graduated at the top of their class in very prestigious high schools. That just leads me to say I will be giving another workshop in a few weeks on international schools, which will include schools in Europe and Canada. And I think for anyone who is adventuresome and looking to really move out of the box, it's a great thing to attend, because the application process outside of the United States is much more transparent, much less based on soft criteria. And there are amazing schools in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Quebec, and in other international areas. Let's see. Did you come across Belmont? Belmont University in Nashville, I know it only peripherally. I believe that's a more religious school. That's one that I would have to get back to you on, Lisa, with a little more research. Um, but again, what a fine place to be if you want to enjoy yourself. Nashville is a great city, and the kids at Vanderbilt are extremely happy. Um, any more questions here? Some of the kids maybe, or anybody want to unmute and just go ahead and ask me? Okay. No,
I have a question.
sure, go ahead.
I was wondering if you recommend applying to like programs at schools that help kids fly in and visit the campus. Do you think that's like a beneficial thing to do?
It's absolutely a beneficial thing to do, and I have a full list of fly-ins. Some of the fly-ins, some of the schools that previously had fly-ins are doing their programs virtually. But what we're seeing is more and more schools are starting to open up. But again, with the Delta, it's hard to say who will be actually bringing kids in. But I will definitely, are you over COVID?
Yes, I'm so over it.
Okay,
Over it.
so I'll send you the list. We can get
Thank you
that
so
list
much.
of fly-ins together. And that's a great way to get to know the school. And it's a great way to demonstrate interest, which also leads me to say to all of you, demonstrated interest is more and more important to schools that are worried about the high number of applicants due to their test optional status and their eventual yield. So it's a good idea as you build a list to just start opening websites, checking in with the universities, opening any email that they send you. They keep track of that interest. And that goes back to when a school is visiting the high schools to be sure to make an appearance if possible when college reps come, or if they're virtual meetings, to either show up to them or to ask your counselor at your school to let the college rep know that you were unable to attend the meeting, but that you're very interested in the school. So another fact that I'll mention is the admissions rates. This past year, schools expanded, in many cases, their percentages of students accepted early decision. So some schools show crazy low admissions rates. Like Tulane is an example. When I checked their admission rate, they showed 10%, but their early admissions rates were way higher. So they took almost all their students between ED1 and ED2, which left a vast number of regular decision applicants in the lurch for acceptances because the places had already been filled. And that impacted the application the admissions rate numbers. So that's something else to consider. Early decision and early action are probably going to be as important this year as they were in the past year. And we still are in that well, not even post, in the COVID era where schools are unsure about how their numbers will end up, how the year will end health-wise. And so they're accepting large numbers of students early decision. Oh, any more questions here?
Hello.
Uh-huh.
Yes, a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Ortman, and thank you for this super insightful presentation. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, will you be sending this to us? Maybe have a copy via email?
That's something that you would have to request through that email address I had that was info@smartcitykids.com, because I'm not sure what they plan to do with this.
Okay, no worries. And then if you have a child currently who's in middle school who has not yet shown a particular interest, is there a way, and you might smile to say this is very early, but we value the intelligence of Smart City Kids very much, and doesn't yet show, nor despite my desire for her to understand engineering in girls does not show a particular interest in math and such for engineering. How do you cultivate that interest in the middle school without pressuring, as well as to really weigh all of the different factors, COVID, taking a good look at the non-Ivies, having visited the Broadmoor myself, I can speak to the Colorado Springs stunning place that you showed the picture of, and it's like a slice of heaven. But how do you weigh all of this and start to intelligently plant seeds and navigate to help them find their best school, not only for status and prestige, but that will bring them joy and success?
Oh, that's a big one.
I'm
So
sorry.
no, it's a really good question. But I think exposing kids to as many things as possible is at an early age, and then just kind of watching what are they gravitating towards. Or there's a wonderful program that's called U Science, YOU, and then capital Science, one word, that 8th grade is a little early for, but that gives some interesting tests that gauge students, what is the word I want? Strengths and weaknesses, but not through questions like, do you want to be a this? Do you like to be a that? It has puzzles, games, different kinds of memory tasks. And then it has a huge number of careers at the end after giving students a basic analysis of the strengths and weaknesses. Well, they never call it a weakness. The greater strengths and lesser strengths, we can say. But that's something also that it's on an individual basis, something we could talk about to try to identify.
Is there a website for this U Science?
Just look it up. It's capital YOU, capital SI, one word, SCIENCE.
Thank you very kindly.
Yeah, because it's not like the normal aptitude tests that are kind of silly where they'll tell a student be a doctor, and then you feel like, well, that's nice. He doesn't qualify academically to be a doctor. Thanks very much. So, yeah. And then again, just what we want is kids to do as many things as they can. And then even entering 9th grade, still as many clubs, as many different sports, everything that they can try, so that then they can begin to hone down the activities that really appeal to them, so that they can continue in a few specific areas. So it's, in the old days, they always talked about colleges wanting well-rounded students. That is not true anymore. What the colleges want is a well-rounded community that's made up of students who have shown extreme commitment in a few areas. So it isn't that shotgunning anymore. Play an instrument, play a sport, be in a political campaign, do this, do that, do that. You don't want to do a million different things. We want to focus eventually on a few things that the child really finds to be interesting, gratifying, and where they can go in some depth into an area that will make them stand out. We have any more questions? Okay, well, I want to thank you all for joining me. We're exactly at 8 o'clock. Again, at info@Smart City Kids, you can reach out and we can do a service call if you're interested in speaking with me for a short time to see what kind of packages we offer and how we can help. And I hope to meet with all of you again in the near future. So have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.